What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Mets Central podcast. And today is episode 23. We are going to discuss the series that just occurred against the Cincinnati Reds, where the Mets took 2 out of 3. But it's an eerily similar feeling to every series, honestly, at this point, where the Mets take the series, or they do what we at least would sign up for going into the series. And then, it's like by the end of it, you're just feeling like they could have done more either way, even though, again, we all would have signed up for 5-1 on the homestand, but when they start 5-0, you really want them to get the job done. It's like the series against the Diamondbacks where they you would have signed up for 2 out of 3, but when they blew that second game, you really wanted them to win it. So it's a bit of a eerily similar feeling to the way it's been. But we're going to discuss the series and, of course, talk about future series coming up, talk about things on the roster that could be problems right now, because despite them winning 9 straight games, there still is some issues that have been trending and staying consistent throughout this time. So before we jump into everything, though, please be sure to leave a like on the stream on your way in. Subscribe if you guys are new to the channel, and turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live. And Yuki, thank you. Appreciate that. But yeah, we got a lot to get into with this one, because this, again, was a series where you probably would have signed up for 2 out of 3 going into, or at least the homestand, because like I said, in my opinion, I thought they were going to win 2 out of 3 against Boston, and then they were going to sweep the Cincinnati Reds, but unfortunately it ended up being the other way around, especially when they really had the opportunity in game 3 to sweep the Reds. It's just, you have your first bullpen blip in a while, which honestly, that's not even the part that makes me frustrated, which I voiced in my post game. So I'm not even that mad about that. It's more so the offense that continues to have these inconsistencies. And now you're starting to see why us Met fans make the case for Lindor to win MVP, because this was a down series for him offensively, and the Mets come short in that last game.
So for me, happy with the homestand. Ultimately happy with the series because you go 5-1 on the homestand and you win another series. And I'm not mad that they lost yesterday's game because, look, they were on a 9-game win streak. Eventually, you were going to lose. You weren't going to finish the season by going on a 20-something game winning streak. That wasn't going to happen. However, it's the manner in that they lost. It's more the same things that we have seen throughout the last couple of series. Very good starting pitching, very good bullpen. However, the offense, once again, scoring in bunches. And I agree with the point that you just said that about, how valuable Francisco Lindor is to his team, because we've seen he had his first down series in a while, and we saw the impact that it had on this lineup. And also, like, other than Mark Vientos, who had the big game in the first game, which we'll get into more in this podcast, but he was held quiet for the second and third game. And you just saw how quiet this lineup really was when you saw Lindor and Vientos not producing in those second and third games. Because right now, I get that I get it that Brandon Nimmo hit 2 foul home runs. Maybe the second one wasn't fair or foul, but it doesn't matter. He's not hitting right now, and he needs to turn it up. Pete, again, still not producing enough. He needs to be better. And right now, like, every time I watch these games and I see, like, anytime the batting the top of the order gets on base, whether that be guys like, Lindor, Nimmo, Alonso, every time it gets a second half of the lineup, I just have no confidence in those guys, because it's like, okay, probably gonna be a strikeout, probably gonna be a double play. I mean, listen, I get, like, Alvy's not hitting. He needs to pick it up, and I know we've been saying that for a while, but it's bad right now. His struggles, Torrens, although he's been very solid defensively again with picking off Ellie De La Cruz yesterday on an attempted steal. So that's what you'll have to see. But you know, are you exactly to count on Luis Torrens to get you big hits consistently? No. We saw Jeff McNeil go down with an injury, so now he's out of the lineup for the rest of the season. And we see, Jose Iglesias coming to the lineup now. And listen, I get it, Iglesias, he's been really good this year, both fielding wise and getting clutch hits. But I've said this constantly about Jose Iglesias, that if you're going to rely on him for starting day in and day out, eventually you're going to start to see the cracks of his game in terms of, his hitting, because he's a bench guy at best. And listen, there's nothing wrong with that, because you need your bench guys, you need your role guys. But if, like I said, if you're going to start relying on him for day in, day out, you will see the cracks. in his game. And over the last 2 games, we have started to see those cracks. And then Winker, he's been hot recently, kind of cooled off this series. Marte, okay, he got the base hit yesterday to put the Mets up 1-0, but he hasn't been really that great at all. We need to see this lineup start to pick it up, because I'm seeing a lot of similarities to 2022 where, okay, this team might be able to make the playoffs, but are we going to see something similar where, the pitching is doing really well and holding up, and ultimately why this team may go out of the wild card is because of the bats, and that they can't get it going against better starting pitching. That's at least my concern right now.
Yeah, it really there's really not much to add to what you mentioned, because it's infuriating, honestly. You're getting zero production from the outfield spots right now. Like, Jesse Winker's been, like you mentioned, hot and cold, and he's probably still your most consistent guy in the outfield. Starring Marte, again, like you mentioned, he had that RBI, great, but he has been terrible since coming back. I mean, it's unplayable levels with the ground balls that he's hitting into. He doesn't field well in the outfield. And then you look at the other guys like Harrison Bader, which, he went 2 for 3 yesterday. I'm not going to completely get on him. And you know what? He actually had a decent series as a whole. But at the end of the day, he's more of a defensive first center fielder, which, again, you could live with that, but you can't live with that when you have guys like Starling Marte performing. And then Brandon Nimmo is really the biggest issue of them all. I mean, he is borderline unplayable, and he's hitting second every single night. For what reason? I mean, I don't know what more they need to see to move this guy down the lineup, because outside of a few games where, here and there he's drawing walks and getting on base every now and then, he's not moving the needle enough, and you're getting zero production from your outfielders. Like you said with Iglesias, he's now being counted on to get every single day pretty much at second base, and now you're going to start to see cracks there, and that's another out in your lineup. And again, you look yesterday, the top 5 it was all 0-4s, and that just can't happen. It can't just be Lindor and Vientos, because at some point, Pete Alonso, we're waiting on him too. Like, when is he going to do something in the clutch with high leverage? It's been a problem all season long, and we're not complaining for the sake of complaining. We're complaining because Pete Alonso in years past was the cog of this offense and the guy that drove this offense year in and year out. And now all of a sudden it's like, where are you when we need you the most? And it's just really frustrating, because you have an automatic out in your 2-hole. Alonso doesn't really come through when guys are on base. The bottom half of your lineup is far too inconsistent. And then you have JD Martinez too, who didn't play the last game. He had a couple of RBIs in the second game, but it's just, again, you're not getting consistent production from him either. It's just, that's where the far and bigger concern is, because it's amazing too. In July, we were sitting here talking about how this offense is great and how, all of a sudden things are looking consistent there, and the pitching is what scared us. Now the pitching has found their way, has found their consistency. And now, whether it's injuries to the offense or what it is, you're seeing just a putrid offense. I mean, there's no way around it. And again, the 9-game win streak kind of masked a lot of the issues that are underlying here, because we've said it. I mean, we've repeated the same line for, I would say, at least the past 4 or 5 episodes of doing these, that it's great that they score a lot in bunches, but you need to get it in other innings. It can't just be one inning out of a 9-inning baseball game where the offense shows up, because there's going to be times where you're facing better teams, especially when you're in the postseason. For instance, you play the San Diego Padres, who have a deep pitching staff. You're not going to get the luxury of facing, some of these non-quality pitchers. And again, yesterday they didn't face quality pitching. It's not like you were facing Hunter Green or Nick Lodolo. You faced, I don't even remember who was on the Aguiar or whatever his name is, was on the mound for them yesterday, and you can't score off him. I mean, something needs to get going with this offense, and somebody needs to be held accountable, whether, again, it goes back to Chavez, which it is just mind-blowing how The ground balls continue to be an issue. Strikeouts continue to be an issue. They struck out 9 times yesterday. It's just the same issues. And it just makes no sense to me how a guy like Brandon Nimmo was pulling the ball so much before the All-Star break. Now all of a sudden, ground balls from him again. Same sort of deal with Bader. He was pulling the ball a lot at points. Now all of a sudden, ground balls from him. I don't know what's happening here, but somebody needs to be held accountable and something needs to give.
Nimmo's a huge issue because this is a guy right now who's in your lineup batting second, who's being paid $20 million a year. And sure, he's playing good defense. I get that. He's always been a decent defender in the corners, but you really need him. And the reason why the Mets paid him is because of his bat and because of his offensive production. And you just take a look over the last month at his offense. Well, he's sitting with a 213 batting average, a 656 OPS, a 308 on base, a 348 slugging, and a WRC plus of 90. That is not good enough. It's not. And he looks lost at the plate because we've watched Brandon Nimmo now over the years, and we know his tendencies. We know that when Nimmo's in the zone, he's up there, he's battling, he's fouling off ball, pitch after pitch, and he's making the pitcher work so that ultimately he could end up getting his pitch. Right now, when I watch Brandon Nimmo at the plate, I see a guy that's just lost because he's swinging at balls in the dirt, and then he's taking pitches on strike three right down the middle. I think it happened twice in the Saturday game, and I'm pretty sure one was a fastball down the middle, and the other one was a changeup in the strike zone. It was low, but it was very hittable, and for Nimmo, that's a pitch that you should be crushing. Now, like I said, sure, he did hit 2 long balls in yesterday's game and the Saturday game. Could that be a sign that he's breaking out? Maybe. Hopefully it is, but I can't sit here right now with confidence and say that Nimmo's going to break out. And the only thing I could say about with Nimmo is, and Carson brought it up on his podcast on Mets Weekly. Make sure you guys check that out also because they dropped a series review yesterday on their channel. He always says that Nimmo is. It doesn't take him a while to get heat up. It doesn't take him a while for him to heat up. All it takes is one really big game for him, and he could spark it. Well, that game eventually has to come pretty soon because I'm telling you right now, if this is the type of Brandon Nimmo we're going to see to the end of the season, sure, maybe they could get away with sneaking into the playoffs. But if you come up against a good pitching rotation like the San Diego Padres have, or you have to play a Milwaukee Brewers team with a very good pitching staff, I'm telling you, it's going to be a quick series for them, and they'll probably get eliminated in 2. Maybe they get lucky and push it 3 games like in 2022.
Yeah, they're not going far with this Brandon Nimmo. And you brought up his second half numbers. I mean, to take it a step further, in September, October, granted it's been a short stint here, of course, in September. I mean, his WRC plus is at 49, and he's got an OPS of 497. This just isn't good enough. It really isn't. And I don't know if this is the correlation about him fainting in the hotel room on July 1st. I don't know if that's the correlation to him not performing well. But if that's the case, he can't play right now. I'm sorry. He needs to go on the IL, and they need to get Drew Gilbert up here because that's another reason I was so for bringing Drew Gilbert up. And it makes no sense. And you saw it yesterday, too. I mean, what do they see in DJ Stewart that we're missing? Because if it's not going to be DJ Stewart and you didn't want to bring up, or if it's going to be a left-handed bat outfielder, I should say, then why are we not going to Drew Gilbert? If you don't want to bring up the rookies, why are we not going to Luke Ritter? Why are we continuing to try this with DJ Stewart when he's an automatic out? And I had somebody say to me, oh, well, you look at his batting average right now in AAA. The guy's hit 8 home runs, 7 home runs in the span of
17
14,
games.
15 games. Yeah, get out of my face with the batting average garbage. And yeah, his batting average as a whole in the minor leagues isn't good because of how he performed earlier in the season. Right now, though, he's been playing a lot better. And if the guy is swinging a hot bat right now, I'm pretty interested in bringing up a hot bat right now when the team desperately needs that, because what you're getting right now from the outfield position is just terrible. I mean, this is just pathetic what you're getting right now from the offensive positions, and you need some sort of spark plug here. And maybe Drew Gilbert's not the answer, but I could tell you right now for free, DJ Stewart's not it. DJ Stewart's not it, and he had no business pinch hitting in either way in that game yesterday. Don't know why he did. I'm watching Jesse Winker bunt as well in his first at bat, which made me want to vomit. I don't know what he. If somebody said something for him to bunt, that person should be fired right on the spot, because I don't know what we're doing having Jesse Winker bunt, because known elite speedy base runner Pete Alonso was on first base. We got to get him in prime position to score. That's why we got to bunt him over. It just makes no sense at all. And again, just to wrap up that whole thought and backtrack to the main conversation here of Nimmo, if it's true that there's some sort of injury, if it has to do with him fainting in the hotel and maybe, he's feeling lightheaded or not getting enough sleep, concussion issues, I don't know what it could be. But all I know is that he's got to sit then. At some point then, you have to just put him on the IL and say to yourself, all right, this isn't good enough. We need better than this.
I don't even know if it's him fainting in the hotel, because I mean, listen, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know like the long-term side effects, because I'm pretty sure he was still hitting up until the All-Star break. He was still hitting home runs, hitting for a high average, getting on base. Now, listen, like I said, I'm not a doctor. Like, I don't know if this is a long-term side effects thing, and the side effects of him falling and getting concussion, if that's still affecting him to now. But like you said, if it's still affecting him now, then why are you playing? Because you're a detriment to the offense right now. And listen, I like I said before, I greatly appreciate athletes trying to always play day in, day out. But when it comes to a point where you're just hindering the team, then that comes to a point where you're just being selfish. And Nimmo is one of the guys. He's supposed to be one of the leaders, one of the co-captains, along with Lindor. And if he's playing right now out of selfish reasons, well, Brandon, I'm sorry. I get you want to play, but right now this team's in a playoff race. Like, we have a chance to get into the playoffs, and if you're not performing at your highest level, then I'm sorry. Like, sit out, get better, and then hopefully, when this team hopefully does make the playoffs, maybe you could be reinserted back into the lineup. But then also building on top of that, I mean, the DJ Stewart thing, like, I just don't get it. I don't, because, and especially now under a regime with David Stearns. David Stearns' biggest thing is he pushes defense. Well, you bring up DJ Stewart. DJ Stewart is a guy without a position. I mean, sure, can he technically play the outfield? Yes, but he's not very good at it. I mean, we saw it. I think it was the first game of the Red Sox series, or the second game. He tried to make a sliding catch and should have made it. If it was probably any other outfielder, he probably would have made it. But again, he dropped it. I don't see the obsession with DJ Stewart is. He's an automatic out the plate. I don't know why they sent him up ahead of JD Martinez yesterday. That made no sense. If your end game was to say, we'll get DJ Stewart on, so then JD Martinez could come in and possibly hit a home run. Well, there is no guarantee that DJ Stewart is getting on base. Like, I would much rather. And who do they pinch it for? They pinched it in for Bader, right?
Stewart. He came in for, I believe, Torrens, and then they had, it was Torrens, and then Bader, who was 2 for 3 on the day already, mind you, they were gonna pitch hit him for Martinez. So instead of rolling with your hot bat on the day, the one guy who had a multi-hit game, instead of going with him, they decided, yeah, you know what? Let's go send up DJ Stewart, because we want to get him on base, and then we want to get JD Martinez to get a home run to tie this. How about you play a safer route and try to get the first run to begin with? It makes no sense.
I mean, listen, for me, I always said bring up Gilbert or Acuna, because look, there's only a couple weeks of the minor league season left. I haven't really been keeping up with the minor league season, but I'm pretty sure there's only a couple weeks left. So
it's like 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's not like you're going to be robbing them of major development and playing time. I mean, look, bring them up here, see what they have, and even if they don't perform, like, it's still good experience for them, because you're bringing them up to a roster that's currently fighting for a playoff spot. I mean, I was just watching I started watching the other day the Derek Jeter documentary on ESPN Plus. And he came up in '95, and he was on the team in '95, but they didn't put him on the playoff roster, and he was just sitting there on the bench and just soaking up all the experience and just all the atmosphere. So like I said, even if the guy doesn't play necessarily well, just let him be up here just to experience a pennant race, a playoff race, because and listen, like I said, you never know. Maybe he does come up here and maybe he crushes it. But I'm telling you right now, I'd much rather see Drew Gilbert or Acuna up here than DJ Stewart, because at least while they may not hit necessarily straight off the bat, at least they could play defense. At least they have a position.
Yeah, and at least they could go on the bases. And as much as everyone freaking rips on Brett Beatty, I would do mean things for Brett Beatty to be playing here over DJ Stewart. I mean, it just makes no sense. The only logical reason I could think for Drew Gilbert not being here is because there's no room on the if you even want to call it a 40-man roster, you might as well call it a 39-man roster, because Alex Ramirez being on the 40-man roster is just a joke at this point, and he's serves no purpose being there, so you might as well call it a 39-man roster for the Mets. But yeah, and at some point they got to try. I don't know who it could be, but one of these outfield bats need to get hot. Whether it is giving even more reps to Tyrone Taylor and hoping that you find something there, because what you're doing is not working. And at the end of the day, to wrap up this entire thought with Nimmo, because we've talked about it now for the past like 10-20 minutes here, they need to at least move him down the lineup. Like at least start there. Give Vientos a longer leash in the 2-hole, because he's one of your only two guys hitting right now. Move someone like Winker up, I don't know, and then have Nimmo hit like 5th or 6th. They need to have somebody else hit second, because you just can't have this automatic out in your 2-hole. You just can't. And yes, Stanley, he should have.
Yeah, I'd probably move him down right now to probably 6, and probably the top of the order, I'd let it be Lindor, Vientos, JD, Pete, and then Winker, or even you could go Winker and Pete. Because it's not like Pete's really hitting right now. So yeah, that'd probably be my top 5 right now, and I just have Nimmo hit 6.
Yeah, and they just have to at some point. But we'll move on and segue into more things about this series, of course, because we kind of went into the offense. We'll talk about the pitching though, which really was again solid for the most part, outside of a little bit of a hiccup from the bullpen, which again is going to happen. And that's part of why I'm not really frustrated with the pitching and the bullpen blip happening, because at some point it was going to. It's been too long since they've had one. So it is what it is. But the first game, Sean and I gave you another excellent start, going 6 2/3. He allowed 4 runs, which sucks because we're seeing a trend where the end of his starts, he continues to allow a couple of runs here and there. But outside of that, I mean, 2 walks, again, commanding the zone, 9 strikeouts for him, so he's really finding his way there. Allowed 2 home runs, though, so it sucks that, again, he really left 2 pitches in bad spots because he only allowed 3 hits. Like, he was really, again, dominant. The numbers, you look at the baseline and think because of the 4 runs, it wasn't as great of a start as it's been, but I would argue it's pretty much up to par to what it's been. And then when you get to the bullpen of that first game, Reed Garrett, welcome back to the circle of trust, gets himself 3 strikeouts. He's earned himself the right to be back there. You have Edwin Diaz, who struck out the side. He's looking more confident as the days go on. And then Jose Budo with a scoreless inning as well, which was huge. You move on to game 2. Jose Quintana, 6 2/3 as well. Only getting 2 walks, got 6 strikeouts, allowed 5 hits, which, listen, he did benefit from good defense behind him on a couple of them, especially in that one inning where they had that huge double play with 2 guys on, and that really could have been a detriment to the inning if it wasn't for that double play being turned. But outside of that, I mean, I will take what we got from Quintana. He gave some volume for once. He gave, at least he struck guys out in that game as well. I will take what we got. Ottavino looked good in the one batter he faced. Obviously, I'm not ready to throw him back into a role that's any higher than what it's been. But, he needed to get work in. It's been like weeks since he has, and it's honestly fine that it's been that way. Danny Young continues to look great, and then Diaz came into that game, was a little bit more shaky, but was fine. And then you go to the last game where Severino had a very weird start. Again, 6 2/3. That was the norm of every starting pitcher. Allowed 5 hits, which wasn't really bad. And the 5 hits he allowed, he did not allow a lot of hard contact at all. So I thought Severino's start was great. It sucks the run that he allowed. Allowed 2 walks in his outing, and then he got 8 strikeouts. I thought Severino was fine. He was great. Reed Garrett again, 3 strikeouts from him. Same deal, 1 1/3 of an inning. Great work from him. Phil Maton, that's where you had the bullpen blip where he looked shaky for the second straight outing, and now all of a sudden the guy that we were putting in the circle of trust, he's maybe 2-3 shaky outings in 2 or 3 more shaky outings in a row away from being out of the circle of trust again. But I'm not going to ridicule the guy. He's been nails for the Mets lately, and again, it's going to happen. And then Alex Young faced the batter. He was fine. So overall, like you said in the chats, Stanley, the bullpen has been solid, but as well as the starting pitching, which again makes it even more frustrating that your offense just couldn't come through in that third game. But the pitching, I got nothing bad to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, the pitching has just been incredible. Like, going to the season, if you told me the pitching staff and the bullpen would have been, I mean, yeah, the bullpen's had blips here and there, but if you told me that towards the end of the year that the bullpen and the rotation would be this good, like, I know I trust in David Stern's game, but he's taken it to a whole nother level with the finds that he's had this year. But yeah, I mean, look, Minaya again was solid. I think Manaya's game was one of those ones where the pitching line doesn't do as much justice as the actual pitching performance, because he pitched very well, and it was just he just hung 2 bad pitches. And really, the first one to Ellie De La Cruz, it was unfortunate because the batter before, he should have struck out Jonathan India on that fastball low and inside, and for some reason the ump called it a ball, and yeah, just made a bad pitch to De La Cruz. Listen, it's gonna happen. De La Cruz is a very good hitter, and he took it deep. And then the one to Stridle, that one sucks because as I was saying that in my head as the at bat was going, I'm like, just get through this inning, don't let up a home run, go 7 strong innings, and of course the next pitch he throws, it's a 2-run home run. But he pitched very well again, 9 strikeouts, had the fastball working really well, 2 walks as well. Again, that's what you like to see. Quintana, like you said, actually was solid. I was shocked. I was surprised. I did like to see the 6 strikeouts. He did benefit from some good defense, like the two turn double plays. The Lindor one was nice, and then the Iglesias turn double play. That was just Iglesias just so good with the glove, man. He's just incredible. And then yesterday, Sevy was very good as well, and unlucky because he lets up 5 hits, but 3 of those hits were just bloop singles. And I'm pretty sure one of the exit velocities off one of those hits was like 35 miles an hour. Just unlucky from him. And then the bullpen, apart from Maton, it was decent. Reed Garrett, I've been waiting for him to come back into the circle of trust. He's officially back, and his splitter is back to being as nasty as it was before. But I think the interesting one about Reed Garrett was, I think the reason why he's so much more effective now than he was in the past couple weeks is because he's throwing a splitter, but he's throwing it a lot less. He was very splitter reliant, like after his high thing when he was just incredible over the year. And I think batters start to pick that up, and they just start to tee off it. But I think he switched around his repertoire a little bit. He's gone to the splitter for less times and more just on those strikeout pitches. So that's worked for him. Danny Young again, who's just been incredible. Alex Young, decent, came in for an inning. Diaz, he was good. Other than, like you said, a little shaky in that second bullpen outing, but he got the job done. And yeah, it was just unfortunate with Maton, because he's pitched very well recently. It was just the 2 last appearances where it's been a bit shaky. I haven't lost confidence in him yet, and I still do trust him. But if we are going to start to see more and more of these shaky relief outings, then yes, eventually he will have to be moved out of the circle of trust. But for now, he's still in here. I'm like, okay, just listen. It's 2 bloops. It happens sometimes. Just get back to your game, like we saw with Diaz against the Padres and the Diamondbacks. It was just 2 bad outings, and ever since then, he hasn't let up a run since. So, but I actually do have an interesting thing, because I've seen kind of some people talk about this. The second game where the Mets are up 4-0 going into the bottom of the 9th. Would you have let Diaz go out there, or would you have let Stanek go out there and then potentially save Diaz for yesterday's game for the ninth inning? Because for me, I kind of look at it, I'm like Stanek, he has to start being used a lot more now because we're getting to a point where, it's close to playoff time. We need all hands on deck, and Stanek really hasn't pitched a lot recently. And for me, I look at that bullpen appearance. So I'm like, look, you're up by 4 runs. You're going up against the middle of the order. If I'm Mendy and I can't trust Ryan Stanek to go out there in a 4-run game, and I can't trust him to get those final 3 outs, well then there's a problem because, like I said, you're getting close to playoff times. Need all hands on deck. So for me, I would have brought in Ryan Stanek right there just to finish that game out, and then I would have saved Diaz for yesterday's game where he could have pitched the bottom of the ninth instead of in the top of the ninth instead of Phil Maton. I don't know. What did you think of that?
I was honestly fine with it because Diaz, as we've seen evidently now over the past few days, he pitches a lot better when he's getting more outings, and it was hard to forecast what was going to happen that next day. So it's one of those things where it's just a fine line, and you have to figure out, okay, we're up by 4. Do I go with a different pitcher than Diaz, or do I go with Diaz because we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, and I want to finish this game out? Because if Stanek all of a sudden allows 2-3 base runners, do you really want Diaz coming in with the bases loaded as his mission to get out of, since they have the 3-batter rule? Because if there was no 3-batter rule, then obviously it's a no-brainer. You put Stanek in, and then if he allows 2 base runners, then it's like, all right, Diaz, get in the game, before it gets into like way too chaotic of trouble. But I do agree with the point that you make that Stanek does have to be used at some point, because you have 2 guys in your bullpen right now who quite literally have no role, and Stanek and Ottavino are those 2 guys. You cannot have the 2 of them be in the spot where you just don't touch them because you don't trust them at all. One of these guys is going to need to get outings, and one of these guys, maybe if they get more outings, is going to catch fire and get hot. And I have way more faith, and I think every Met fan would agree, in Ryan Stanek being that guy that could, you could catch the hot hand there, versus Adam Ottavino, where we saw last year where he was able to get a lot of appearances either way because the team was not great, and he still wasn't great. And also age is just simply catching up to him, where with Ryan Stanek, at least his arm is still lively, and he was closing games for Seattle earlier in the year. It's a lot more reliable of an arm, and a lot better stuff from his arm versus Adam Ottavino. I don't know. Again, it's hard to say, because if you asked me now, looking back at how the series went down, yeah, I would have probably brought Stanek in then, and then go to Diaz in this game. Or you could even make the argument that Maton should have been in up by 4 if you really trust him so much, so then you didn't have to use Diaz. Like, it's little things like that where Mendoza has to find a fine line with this bullpen, and he has to find a way to navigate this better, because you cannot let it just be, all right, we're up by 4. Diaz has to come into every single outing where we're up by 4, which, again, I get why he did it. You got to win the game that's right there. But I don't know. Like, it's just such a tough decision at the end of the day.
So, yeah, I agree with your point that, obviously you don't know what's going to happen in the next game. And right now the Mets need every single win as they can possibly get. But it comes back to the point where I said, like, listen, you have to see what you have with Stanek. You can't just let him sit in that bullpen. And like I said, if Carlos Mendoza cannot trust Ryan Stanek in a game where you're up 4-0, because it's not like a high leverage situation. It wasn't like a 2-run game or a 1-run game. You have a 4-run lead. You just need 3 outs against the middle order of a Reds lineup. And listen, the Reds are not the Padres. They're not the Yankees. You don't have dangerous hitters in that lineup necessarily. Now, look, could they come through with some big hits? Yeah, sure they can. But like I said, if I'm Mendoza and I can't trust Stanek to get those 3 outs in that situation, well, then there's a problem with Stanek, because then at that point, right now, you like you said, you have two guys in that bullpen with no roles. And when you're heading into the playoffs, you need every single guy in that bullpen to know what their role is and to be ready to be called upon in any situation.
Yeah, and it's even more of a problem having two guys with no role when you don't have a long man back there in the bullpen, which we thought we were about to, and which we'll, of course, discuss rolling into the Toronto series with tonight's game. But when we get to that point, but yeah, it is a thing too where Stanek, I don't think has been terrible in his last few outings, so I get the point too, where it's like, and I really do agree with that point that if he can't get these Reds hitters out, then how are we going to trust him in October when they're facing the Padres, when they're facing potentially the Atlanta Braves or the Diamondbacks or the Brewers, whoever it might be, and these teams have way better offensive lineups? How are we going to trust Ryan Stanek? Like, is he just going to hang out there in the bullpen and come in if the Mets are up like 10-0 in a playoff game? Because with the way this offense is, I can tell you right now, there's not going to be a place then where they're up by a bunch of runs. And if anything, he's only going to come in because they're down by a bunch of runs. So I agree that, we're in September. You got to get these guys going. And it goes without just the offense. It goes with the bullpen with Stanek. And you know what? Even Ottavino needs to get something going from his arm, because you can't just have the two of them just kicking back there in the bullpen and only coming in whether you're up by a lot or down by a lot, because what is that going to do for you?
No, yeah, I mean it's like I said, if you have two guys in this bullpen right now with no roles, then it's a detriment to the team, and you got to start seeing Stanek a lot more. I'm not saying use him every day or use him in high situations over and over again, but those type of roles, those type of games where you're up by 4 runs and you need 3 more outs, let him let him go out there and let's see what we have with him.
Yeah, and I'm willing to chance that because, like I said, his last few outings really haven't been bad. And like I said, in the last outing he had, I'm really close to, a few more clean outings from him, and I would put him back into the circle of trust a bit. And because at the end of the day, they brought this guy in to be part of the bridge to Edwin Diaz, and now he's just an afterthought. So yeah, at the end of the day, they got to do something, but we'll move on. As we alluded to a bit before with tonight's game and going forward, they will take on the Toronto Blue Jays as they start a 6-game road trip. It's 6, right? Or 7?
6.
6, yeah. So 6-game road trip against the Toronto Blue Jays as well as the Philadelphia Phillies. There's an off day in there, which is really nice because this team desperately needs it, which also really helps with Wednesday's game because we could see them do what they did in that game the last time. Tyler McGill, who is starting tonight, what they did last time where they could, empty the tank with the bullpen on Wednesday if it does get to that point where they need to. But either way, Tyler McGill will get the start tonight because Paul Blackburn still isn't ready to go, which that's a whole separate issue, which, listen, I don't know how to feel about that because I'm going to be honest here. And I know that I'm sure that people are going to be like, oh, come on, don't be ridiculous when I say this. I don't trust Blackburn any more than I do McGill right now. Like, sure, I trust him a little bit more, but it's not like Paul Blackburn has been otherworldly for this rotation the way I am like, you know what? Yeah, this really sucks that we don't have Tyler McGill. The only thing you might be missing from Paul Blackburn in tonight's game is a little bit of extra volume, but again, Tyler McGill, he did fine against a lesser lineup with Chicago, and obviously the Blue Jays are not nowhere near as bad as the White Sox, but this is still at the end of the day a lesser team that you should be able to beat with your offense anyway. And again, this is another thing where it's a huge test for the offense in a series like this, especially because of the fact that they're going to need to score for McGill tonight. And then you got Bassett versus Peterson in the second game, and Bassett's really struggled this season. So that's another game where you look at and it's like, that should be something where the offense should get going. And then you have Mania versus Francis, which Francis, though, has been ridiculous for Toronto as of lately. But Mania's also been great for the Mets lately. So to me, I wouldn't take anything less than 2 out of 3 in this series, because at the end of the day, this team is struggling. And they got to find a way to get this. And I don't know if there's truth to this, but I would be fine with this too if they let Blackburn get tomorrow's start, and that's what this is about. Let McGill play tonight, Blackburn Tuesday, and then Wednesday Peterson, so then you could save Mania for the Phillies. But I actually like that theory a lot, and you don't have proof of it, you're just guessing. I actually really, I'd be on board with that.
I mean, Peterson's still scheduled for tomorrow, so they haven't said anything, but it kind of is odd though, because they just scratched Paul Blackburn without giving him a reason, because he pitched his last outing in Syracuse. He was fine. They brought him up, and yeah, like I said, they never gave us a reason. They just said McGill's pitching today. I'm like, okay, cool. But I mean, yeah, I mean, look, while I know you're not personally the biggest fan of Blackburn and you weren't really in love with the trade overall, I do like Blackburn, and listen, I get it that he's had a couple outings where he's been beat up. Most notably the A's game and the Padres game where he came out hurt. He got beat up in those games, but for most of his starts, and especially against the bad lineups, I know, like I just mentioned, that he got lit up against the A's, but mostly for the worst lineups like the Angels and the Rockies, he's actually been pretty solid for the Mets so far. So I would have liked to see him go tonight. And yeah, I think the thing, like you mentioned, the only thing that you're not getting from Blackburn and you're not getting from McGill is the length, because Blackburn has at least shown for a couple of his starts that he could go 6 innings at max. And with McGill, like we saw on the game that we went to against the Red Sox, he only gave him 3-4 innings. So you're going to have to use the bullpen today a lot. So am I really confident with McGill on the mound? No. But I mean, you're going against a lineup that's not really great. Like, really, their only big weapon is Vladdy Guerrero Jr. So if McGill can just find a way to hold him off the scoreboard, or maybe even give up 1 run against him and, maneuver around, maybe give you 4 or 5 innings and then give it to the bullpen, like, okay, then, maybe the Mets could win this game. But I think it's going to have to be a game where the offense shows up today. And like we've seen from the last couple games, it's not been the case. Hopefully they do turn it around and find something in this series. Because let me tell you, while the pitching has been really good, you're going to Philadelphia in the next couple days, and that's a very hitter friendly park. So yes, while the pitching has been very good, you're going into a very hitter friendly park with a lineup that can hit a lot of home runs. So you're going to need the offense to eventually step up here, especially against the Phillies.
Yeah, I agree with that. Which this, like I said before, yeah, this is the series where they got to get it together, because if it's not now, when is it going to be? You're facing way lesser pitching, and that Blue Jays bullpen is not good at all. I mean, we saw them blowing games against the Braves. We saw them. They almost blew that game they won, because I don't remember the guy's name, but he was horrendous. Zach Pop is not anything special. Nobody in that bullpen, outside of maybe Chad Green, who also let up a couple of runs the other day. No one's really anything that special. This is the time for the offense to prove you, me, and all the other assholes that are pissed off with them right now and want to see more. This is for them to show their worth and show that they're good. But all I can say is this: I think Yuki might be onto something with his theory, but I think it hinges on what we get tonight. Because if the Mets drop tonight's game, I think they're going to feel urgency and they're going to just go to Peterson tomorrow. But if they win tonight, I think that might incline them more to go to Blackburn for tomorrow's start, because then you could be in a spot where, okay, because you would be blessed if you got 5-6 innings from McGill. You would be unbelievably blessed to get that sort of outing from him.
I would take 5 innings right now if you told me it's a guarantee.
Sign me up for 5. I will take that. And if you get that and you find a way to win this game where your bullpen's not overly taxed and you find a way to win, then maybe Blackburn could go, because to, counter the point of what we talked about before, where he does give volume, there's also the starts where he hasn't gave volume. Like you look at the Oakland start where 4 innings, the San Diego start, granted he departed with an injury, but he probably would have departed early in that game regardless, because he allowed 10 hits and 5 runs, mind you. So, it's something where that theory could be true, or maybe we're looking at a situation where they're going to go with McGill tonight, Peterson tomorrow, and then Blackburn for the last game, and then let Manaea face the Phillies. I think a lot hinges, like I mentioned, on what goes down in the first game or two of the series, because if you drop the first game with McGill here on the mound, then you have to go into desperation, because you cannot lose a series against the Blue Jays, and you have to throw out both Peterson and Manaea then the next 2 days, because you can't risk Paul Blackburn stinking it up against them. And I get that, you could argue that the Phillies games are more important to win versus this, but to me, it's September. You're in a wild card race. Every single win matters right now, and you got to find a way. And you still have an off day, so you could finagle the rotation around somehow, some way, to where, if Peterson goes tomorrow, you could always utilize that off day to your advantage and put Peterson in that series against the Phillies for the last game. So there's ways to manipulate this, and I think that's what they're doing. There's definitely something going on here because they didn't activate Blackburn, but we just have to see what exactly that game plan is.
No, yeah, I mean, like you said, every game now is important. You might say, cool, the Phillies series is more important because, if the Phillies slip up and the Mets keep winning, there's a chance at the division right now. But listen, right now, just give me a guaranteed playoff spot and win this series against the Blue Jays. And it's also a big series right now because the Braves are currently playing the Nationals. So that's an easier series for the Braves. So they probably will take 2 out of 3 or maybe even sweep the Nationals. So right now, the Mets just got to focus on the Blue Jays, take advantage of a poor team, and try to sweep them, but at most win another series. And then we'll head into Philadelphia and we'll go from there. But I think the Mets right now are in a very good position. And I get that they lost last night and the offense isn't exactly great. But I think when you do look at the schedule, they're in a good position because right now they stand at 78-65. There's 19 games left to go in the season. So let's just say 88 wins get you a playoff spot. And I mean, it should, because if 88 wins is to get you a playoff spot this year, that's ridiculous. And that just be the Mets' typical luck of, when they're not in a playoff hunt, a low win total gets you into a playoffs. But of course, the year they're in, they need a high playoff win amount. But like I said, let's just say 88 wins gets you into the playoffs, right? So Mets at 78-65 with 19 games remaining. They can go 10-9 in these last 19 games and finish 88-74.
I don't know if 88's enough.
I know, but that's what I was saying. But I think they are kind of in a good. I mean, because you also don't know because the Brewers playing the Diamondbacks, so they could take games off of them. Then the Diamondbacks are also playing the Padres, so it's going to be interesting. But I think 88 might be enough. And listen, if 10-9 is all it needs them to get into a playoff spot, that should be very doable because right now you have 3 games against the Blue Jays. You got 3 games against the Nationals. So let's just say they go 5-1 in those 6 games against those 2 teams. Now they just need 5 wins against 7 games against the Phillies, 3 against the Braves, and 3 against the Brewers. So they should be able to do it. But like you said, 88 wins might not be enough. It's going to be one of those things where, we just have to keep watching the standings and keep watching every single other game, scoreboard, watch the other teams because it's it's going to be tough. And like we've been saying last couple podcasts, that most likely it will come down to that last series in Atlanta.
I don't know if it will. I genuinely think, barring anything changing within the next couple of weeks here, I think that the Mets' best chance at this point is the Diamondbacks losing, because they have a tougher schedule and they seemingly are cooling off right now. That might just be the way that they get in at this point, and it's kind of crazy to think that because of what we thought the Diamondbacks were, but that might be their best shot. And yeah, it's just tough to say, because I really don't know if 88's enough, because you look at the standings right now, and to counter that, say 88's enough, then you look at some of these other teams that already are at like 80 plus wins, like the Padres. Do they realistically need only 7 more wins to basically guarantee them a playoff spot? I don't know about that. And then the Diamondbacks even too. The Braves, I could see them easily still winning 88. I don't know. I really don't know if it's going to be enough. We'll of course see, and maybe it does come down to that series in Atlanta. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just feel at this point their best shot is catching the Diamondbacks. To the point where I don't know if maybe I'll say this. Maybe I just don't view the Atlanta series as this series where, okay, this is going to make or break them because they're competing with Atlanta. It might make or break them because, they need to scrape out these wins so they could stay ahead of the Diamondbacks or the Padres at that rate. Because I don't know. Only the Braves would have Gio Urshela and Laureano hitting like 6th and 7th for them and win baseball games still, because it's just them. But it's really tough. And this is why I said when they did blow that game to the Diamondbacks, and I said barring them winning, at minimum 7 games in a row, there was no chance. You're seeing it right now, because if they didn't go on this 9-game heater and, say they even got 7 wins or even like 6 or 7 wins, all of a sudden you're talking to them 2-3 games out of the playoffs right now, and we're probably sitting here moving on to the offseason discussion, because it's like, yeah, well, maybe they'll stay afloat and then maybe they could catch Atlanta, but will they? They had to go on this win streak, and honestly, they probably are going to have to go on a little bit of a big win streak again. They're probably going to have to do something like that, or at least a run where it's like 8-2 in a 10-game span.
It's one of those odd situations where everything's so close right now that realistically you could look at every option, every situation, and you could potentially see it happening after these 19 games finish. Because look, they're only 2 games away from the Padres, who hold wild card 1. So, I mean, there's a chance that the season ends and the Mets are hosting a wild card series at Citi Field. There's a chance they may have to go to Arizona and play a wild card series there. There's a chance they may have to go to Milwaukee or stay in Milwaukee after that final series and play the Brewers in a 3-game series. Or there's just a chance that they might not be in the playoffs after all. These last 19 games are going to be just the stress levels are going to be off the roof, because every game is essentially like a must-win game now. And,
Yeah.
and you know what? I'm going to say this. These 19 games, they're going to be a test for Carlos Mendoza in his first year. We're really going to see what Carlos Mendoza is made of in these last 19 games, because every single decision, every out, every pitch is going to matter.
Yeah, because like you said, and like we're both saying, I would argue we're looking more at the 90 win total, which means they have to win 12, and how many games were remaining again?
19, so they have to go 12-7.
12-7 in that stretch. I mean, it's a realistic ask with the way they've been playing, and it's something that could happen. Will it? I don't know, but you're right. Like, this is the crunch time, and this is where Mendoza, and this stretch here could potentially even win him manager of the year. Like, if they go on this run here where they go, say they do go 12-7 and they make the playoffs with 90 wins, and who knows, maybe we're even more lucky and all of a sudden they're the top wildcard team and hosting games at Citi Field and they leapfrog all these teams. I mean, that puts Mendoza in the manager of the year conversation, because he's doing something right at that point.
No, yeah. I still think it's going to go to Pat Murphy of the Braves. The Brewers, just because they've had an incredible year and expectations for them were down low going into the season. But if Mendy and the Mets could find a way to host playoff games in the wild card round, at that point you have to give them a really good conversation for winning NL Manager of the Year, and it'd probably be one of those things where probably the Mets both in the MVP race and both National League Manager of the Year, they'll probably come up close, finish second, when realistically it should be them that win those awards.
Yeah, and we'll see how everything goes. Of course, starts tonight. This stretch of games where they need to, of course, try to win 10, 12 games. I would argue, and if it's more than that, then at that point, you just look back at the start of the season and say that's where they lost it, and there was nothing more they could have done. But do you have anything else to add before we wrap it up here?
Just keep on winning, and hopefully the offense shows up.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens tonight. Tyler McGill, like I said, on the mound. We'll be back here to recap it, of course, after we find out the result. And yeah, hopefully manifest this, please, another 9-game win streak. Because if they win, I'll tell you this right now, if they win 9 games in a row, it would take another Mets collapse for them to miss the playoffs at that point. Because if you win 9 straight and miss the playoffs, then I'm gonna do things that I probably shouldn't say on stream. But regardless, we'll wrap it up here.
If they go on a 9-game win streak, they're going to be sitting with 87 wins with what, 3-6, with 10 games left to go. Surely they can't blow it there, but it is the Mets, so you never do know. Them. We've done it in the past. So.
We can't put it past them to go on a 10-game losing streak after winning 9 in a row. It's just one of those things. But yeah, we'll see we'll see how it goes down. Don't forget though to leave a like, of course, on this stream if you enjoyed it. Subscribe again if you are new, especially if you are Mets fans. Turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live here on the channel, and we will see you guys in the next one.